Yo, what up? Welcome to the video, and today we're going to be discussing about my top 10 USMT head coaching options. So, let's begin. So, obviously, we all know that Greg Berhalter, his job is on the line. Right now, the USMNT or USSF right now are doing an investigation over Greg Berhalter, and many people have left the USSF, including Brian McBride. So, obviously, the USSF is getting that shit. Their stuff is getting cleaned. there there's like gonna be lots of cleaning in that federation to do, and obviously right now I believe that is the better option right now, and I think alongside with new USSF members, I think we need a new head coach. So obviously let's begin because this is the video we all want to see. So yeah. So let's discuss about my top 10 options, starting off from Anthony Hudson. So right now, let's go with the USMNT interim coach right now. So right now, he's an assistant coach technically, since Greg Berhalter's kind of still the head coach. But obviously, for right now, Anthony Hudson is the interim coach. He has coached in MLS, the youth national teams, the New Zealand national team, and Bahrain national team. Yes, if you can even call those national teams, you can call them international experience. Like if you want to call them that, you're free to do so. But obviously, for me, I'm not gonna say that. If I'm gonna say cons, I think a terrible selection in tactics, and he has many of the same issues that Greg Berhalter had. Considering this man was the assistant coach for Greg Berhalter, obviously, he would have many of the same issues that Greg Berhalter had. Some of the same views as well, like always passing it out wide, always crossing it in, and so forth. No matter depending on what type of team you have, that's what you do. So obviously Anthony Hudson is going to be having some of the same issues, and obviously he has some terrible selection. Like this man picked Aaron Long for the January camp. Like, okay, you could have selected a young center back. You probably could have selected Josh Winder, but no, instead you decided to pick Aaron Long. Yeah, out of all people you could have selected, you select Aaron Long. Obviously he only brought one right back to the January camp as well. Let's not forget about it. He only brought Julian Gressel. I'm not calling the Juan Jones a right back because technically he does play the left back for New England Revolution. So obviously, this man having Caden Pierre and Nathan Harriel as good young options, this man goes up with Julian Gressel, some random ass fullback in the MLS. I know he has been great in MLS, Julian Gressel, but obviously he should be nowhere near the national team, and he's not even he just got his U.S. citizenship, and that just makes us look bad. We are not Mexico. We do not need players who are like become citizens representing our national team. We have players that have actual connections to the U.S. So obviously there's that. So next is Steve Cherundolo. He just won MLS Cup with LAFC, but we gotta say something. Like outside of that, he has been a coach in Bundesliga youth teams, USL, and in the youth national teams as well. He has some European experience since obviously he has been a youth team manager for many Bundesliga teams, and obviously he's a good MLS coach. But he has limited experience and obviously no international experience just yet. So obviously Steve Cherundolo, although he won MLS Cup, there's as well another aspect we have to look into. LAFC right now were when they won MLS Cup, obviously most of us knew they were gonna win it, or they were the favorites to win it. Like if your team has fucking Arango, Carlos Vela, Cullen Acosta, Giorgio Chiellini, Carrillo as well, Hollingshead, and amongst Krepau at the goal, and obviously amongst other amongst other players, you have Gareth Bale coming off the bench. Like, if you have Gareth Bale coming off the bench, then your team is stacked for MLS standards. And we all knew LAFC were gonna win the MLS Cup. So obviously, LAFC probably they still do have the most talented team in MLS. So obviously, you're not saying much with winning MLS Cup with LAFC and the Supporter Shield. You're not saying much, considering that LAFC have by far the best roster. But obviously, Cherundolo does bring some good things to the table. So obviously, in the future, he might be good to look into. But for right now, no. So obviously, next is gonna be Top Ramos. Not much to say about here. Obviously, for me, I think he has little high level experience. He does seem to have a good grasp on our national team. He did highlight some of the main issues that Greg had, but obviously, just looking at the issues, I think it's pretty easy to know what the issues are with our national team right now. And Ty Ramos, although he did point them out pretty good, I think obviously other coaches as well did point them out. So obviously you're not saying much over there. Ty Ramos has been a manager for the youth national team. He has been a manager in MLS, and he is right now Hartford athletic manager in USL. So obviously, if we were to get him, obviously, technically, he'll be kind of like a free agent. Like, we're getting him from a USL club, which is not that hard to do. Well, not that hard to convince a USL club just to give him up to get to coach the national team. So it's not that hard. But obviously, we want a coach with more high level experience. So yeah, next is gonna be Hugo Perez. Again, same issues with Tab Ramos, but to a lesser extent. He has international experience. He has actual international experience. He has been head coach of El Salvador. However, I think you're not saying much by being manager of El Salvador. Like most of Salvadorians, although they're pretty passionate about their national teams, deep in their hearts, they probably know that their team is buns and probably is going to be buns for forever, unless their country somehow gets bigger and like in the size of the U.S. Like if El Salvador starts annexing like who knows the entire Central America, part of Mexico, and parts of South America. Like unless that happens, their El Salvador is always gonna be buns. Like we already know. Like so, you're not saying much. But Hugo Perez, he does have a good knowing of our players. Obviously, he did play good against Greg Berhalter, but obviously, this man probably knows a lot about our national team because obviously he's American. So obviously, there's the reason that as well. So I think Hugo Perez he's a pretty average option, but obviously for me, I think we should be we should have better options on the table right now. So the next manager is going to be Jim Curtin. Right now, he's one of the best coaches in MLS. He's the coach for the Philadelphia Union. He's been there technically forever. So obviously, no international experience. He has only coached in MLS. So obviously, a lot of the issues that Greg Berhalter had, although Greg Berhalter won an MLS Cup and with Columbus Crew, we all know what happened next. Greg Berhalter becomes coach of the national team and does a terrible job. So obviously, just saying that Jim Curtin's one of the best coaches in MLS, it's not saying much. So I think just by stating that stating that he's a good MLS coach is probably not enough to convince us to think that he's an actual national team coach. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about Jim Curtin. I think his tactics are pretty good. He knows how to deal with young players. Obviously, he coaches the Philadelphia Union. Why wouldn't he? He has coached the Aronson brothers. He has coached Mark McKenzie, Nathan Huriel, obviously Leon Flack, Quinn Sullivan, Jack McGlynn. Uh, am I forgetting someone? Austin Trusty as well. He has coached him, so obviously he has a good good knowing of some of our good young players that we have in this pool. But obviously, I think that's about the as what the pros go. So obviously, I think there's better options than Jim Curtin right now. That will probably be having a lot better tactics than him. So Yeah, next is going to be Paulo Bento. Paulo Bento, if we're going to have to highlight something very important over here, is that this man right now is a free agent. So obviously he just coached the national team, which was South Korea, and he did a pretty good job with South Korea. He did a pretty good job. He brought them to round 16. They got destroyed by Brazil, but obviously it's Brazil. They were facing South Korea, and obviously South Korea got their butts handed to them. And obviously, I think considering that he did a pretty good job with South Korea, I think with a better national team like us, I think he can do a good job. But I feel something about him. I think he hasn't accomplished anything of note with any of the national teams as coached. Obviously, he has only coached South Korea and obviously Portugal, but obviously he didn't win Euros 2016 with Portugal because most of the time when he coached Portugal, it was pretty much Cristiano Ronaldo, Pepe, Nani, and a whole bunch of eight bums that were playing alongside him. And obviously, he hasn't had much. He doesn't he doesn't seem like a very convincing coach. But I think he's a pretty strong candidate for a national team if we were to consider for him. So obviously there's that. So next is going to be Herve Renard. Herve Renard right now he has coached. If I'm going to highlight something over here, it's going to be Saudi Arabia, Ivory Coast, Zambia, and Morocco. Obviously, I want to say something. The Zambia accomplishment he did with Zambia, I think, does show a good quality of him, which he tends to overperform with the national teams he's given with, especially Zambia and Saudi Arabia. I think with Zambia, obviously Zambia won an AFCON, and considering that you had Ivory Coast amongst other nations that could win an AFCON realistically, I think that was a very good accomplishment by Herve Renard, especially because obviously he did a very good job with Zambia. With Saudi Arabia, obviously he defeated Argentina in the first game, which was a major accomplishment for him. Saudi Arabia did lose their next two games, but I think the game against Poland, I think Saudi Arabia could have won that game realistically if they didn't did it so much of a choke job. In the game against Mexico, I think they kind of failed to show up, but obviously Mexico was in must win mode. So obviously there's that. So obviously I think Saudi Arabia, Herve Renard did overperform. I think with the competition he had in that group, I think he did a really good job, especially in the first game, which was a good masterclass by him. Uh, if I'm gonna have to say something, I think he's probably not familiar with our player pool and the teams that we face, and some of the CONMEBOL teams. I think considering that he has only managed in pretty much in Africa and in the Middle East, he probably doesn't know much about CONMEBOL or CONCACAF when it comes to their quality and obviously their style of play. He doesn't. He probably does hasn't. He hasn't seen that type of play. So obviously there's probably that. But obviously I think we should be considering Herve Renard. Uh, and obviously he's not a free agent right now. So and obviously he's probably on a massive contract with Saudi Arabia, especially since they beat Argentina. So obviously it's going to be pretty hard to get him when it comes to the financial standpoint. So yeah, next is going to be Marcelo Bielsa. Marcelo Bielsa, he has coached Argentina, and obviously I want to highlight this. Great tactics. I think out of all tacticians on this list, I think Marcelo Bielsa is easily the best tactician on this list. He is the best tactician on this list, but that is only comes to the club level. Obviously, in clubs, you see your players every single day for every single day of the year. You have an off season to work with them. You can build your own team through the transfer window. So obviously, Marcelo Bielsa is a great manager, but on the club level. When it comes to the national team level, like with Argentina, obviously kind of did underperform with them. Argentina didn't do a good job. Although they had some good players like Diego Simeone, amongst others. I think they could have done a way better job than what they did in that World Cup, and I think that Marcelo Bielsa probably is more of a club manager than a national team manager. But if we do hire him, I think we have some good things to offer for him. We kind of do have those direct players that kind of he likes to have, like Christian Pulisic. So obviously, I hope it can. I hope he's kind of the manager that kind of can kind of fit our style. So that's what I'm hoping. So next is going to be Jesse Marsch. Jesse Marsch right now is a free agent, and obviously I'm going to go back to the last. Oh my! Obviously he's a free agent. I forgot to say that Marcelo Bielsa was as well a free agent, which is pretty important thing to say. Right now he's a free agent. He's a great American coach. I think with most national teams or all the national teams that have won a World Cup, they have won it with a native manager, which obviously, let's say Brazil, of the 5 World Cups they won it with a Brazilian manager. Germany, the same thing, they won it with a German manager. England, they won it with an English manager. France, they won it with a French manager. Argentina, they won it with an Argentine manager. So obviously, if we're probably gonna have the best chances, I think an American coach would be our best chances to do so. And I think obviously, considering that he has some good experience in Europe, I think that's pretty good to see. If I'm gonna say have some complaints about Jesse Marsch, obviously he has done coached the national team before, and obviously he probably is a pretty much like a system type guy. I think he kind of has a system. He's pretty loyal to, and he kind of sticks to it. So obviously, if we're gonna have one complaint about him, that's about that. So obviously, I think he's our number 2 option. I think he's a great option to have, and I hope if we do not hire the next guy, I really hope it's Jesse Marsch, because obviously Jesse Marsch is a good coach for us. So obviously I hope we can get him. So next is going to be Ricardo Gareca. I think our first option should be Ricardo Gareca. I think his job that he did with Peru was amazing. He reached the finals of the Copa America with Peru. Considering that the Peru squad on paper looked absolutely terrible, I think that should be saying something. Uh, Obviously he has done other great things as well, but I think the most I think I can say is about his time with Peru, and I hope right now that we can get him. He's a free agent. I think no other national teams have been on the look for him. I think the only national team that's kind of been rumored to be getting him is Ecuador. And I don't think, like, although we don't have a player like Palacios, I think we have a lot more high ceiling players than what Ecuador have. Ecuador right now is pretty much about Palacios, and I think that's only about it. So obviously, if we can get Roberto Gareca, I hope we can get him, because obviously he can probably take the best out of our team, and obviously he overperforms, which is a good sign. So obviously, I'm hoping we can get him. I think the only thing we have to worry about him is probably his English, but obviously with a translator, I think that can fix it. So yeah, I think Gareca should be our number 1 choice. I think he should probably be our first choice manager, which is what I'm hoping to see. So yeah, so thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.